next100.org. And finally, to kick off our conversation today, we have introductory remarks from a leading voice in immigration and addressing the nation's immigration challenges in a humane and responsible manner. Thank you, Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, for your continued championing of immigrant families.
Pour continuer à bien encadrer familles migrantes.
Our nation's capital. It's a privilege to join the Century Foundation's Next 100 Policy Entrepreneurs for the launch of the Mapping Immigrant Access Project. For 4 years, El Paso witnessed children dying in government custody, horrific overcrowding, forced feeding of adults, the continued traumatic family separation policy, and the erosion of the asylum, including remain in Mexico. Now the Biden administration is embarking on the monumental task of overturning the evil of the last 4 years and enacting immigration reforms that reunites families and forces transparency and accountability within DHS, suspends remain in Mexico, creates a pathway for citizenship for DACA recipients and GPS holders, and protects the lives of children and families fleeing violence, persecution, and poverty. President Biden has made immigration reform a top priority and has already signed a series of executive actions to restore humanity and our American values to our immigration system. But there's hard work ahead of us to finally reform our broken immigration system and recognize that immigrants are essential for our nation's recovery. That's why I'm grateful to all of you for your commitment to building a more inclusive, equal, and just America. Thank you.
Merci un peu.
Thank you, Representative Escobar, for those remarks,
pour représentant et sénateur Escobar pour remarques.
We are lucky to have you representing us in our
Et nous
nation's
très
capital.
contents que vous
time.
reconnaissez nous. Et nous
First of all, I want
très
to welcome and
appréciés que
thank
vous prenez le
everyone
temps
for
parler avec
joining us
nous. Et
for
merci
joining
tout
this
le monde
big
qui
team
vient.
effort, Next 100, Haitian Bridge
J'ai
Alliance
force
in
en a
schools,
fait là
and
avec
Respond
Next
Crisis Translations, who are
100
doing our
et
translating
organisation
today. For
Haitian
our
Bridge
event
Alliance
today,
à
we're so
travailler
glad to have
ensemble à
so many of you
EMSCO.
here to talk about our new
Nous
report,
inviter en pile
Embracing
nous
Our
pour nous
Strengths,
capables de parler
to
sur
talk
rapport
about
nous
what
pour
states can
faire,
do to
comment
support
nous capables
immigrants and
encourager nous,
immigrant
qui ça
families,
l'État yo ka
and
fait
to
pour
talk a little
supporter
bit
famille
about what
migrants
developing policy by and with, not
et
to,
qui va pour
immigrants
développer
can and should look like.
politique ça
I'm Emma Videra, I'm the
ensemble à mon
Executive
lieu.
Director of Next 100. I'm
Moi,
going
je
to give
suis
some quick intro remarks to
directrice
ground us
Next
today,
100
and then
là.
I'm going to
Je
turn it
vais
over
faire
to
une
the
remarque
authors,
rapide
partners,
et
and
puis après
participants of this
ça,
report who really
écrivains,
drove the work,
partenaires,
to
participants,
talk a little bit about their process, their findings, and what the
un
work
peu de
ahead looks like.
processus là,
And then
et puis
hopefully we'll open
travailler
it
bien
up
pour
to
plus devant.
questions from the
Et puis après
audience.
ça,
So
on
thanks for
a
joining us.
ouvrir questions avec audience.
So first,
Donc,
what are we
premier
here to talk
bagay là,
about? We're here
pour
to
qui
talk
ça
about
nous là, de qui ça
states
n'a
and what
parlé
states
là.
can do to support
Donc là, pour nous
immigrants,
parler de
immigrant
l'État et
families,
qui
mixed
ça est
status
capable de faire
families.
pour supporter famille
A
migrante.
lot of the time in immigration, we focus
En pile
entirely at the
fois,
federal
dans
level, which is
l'immigration,
important.
nous toujours
As we
regarder
just
seulement au
heard
niveau
from the
fédéral là, qui est
representative, it is
important.
good, it is
J'en suis parlé de
exciting that we are
sénateurs.
reopening conversations
Donc,
about federal immigration
très bon que
reform,
nous avons réouvert
push for pathways
conversation
to
ça.
citizenship. Really glad to see efforts
Et nous
underway
très
to address the
contents,
attacks
j'ai
and, as you
fort
put it, the evil
qu'a
that
fait
so many immigrant communities
contre
faced throughout the
immigrants,
last administration.
bagaille que fait
But
face
at the
avec
same
eux.
time, while we
Mais en
are
même
hopeful
temps,
and those
tout,
efforts
nous
are critical,
continuer
immigrant
souhaiter
families
ça
shouldn't be asked to wait
Donc, mes
wait
familles
during a
migrants
pandemic
pas
when they've been on the front lines, to wait while states can act,
pendant la
but
pandémie
too many
et
are
puis ou
not.
bien
There's
tant
16.7 million
pour
individuals
l'État
living in mixed status
agir.
immigrant households in every state in the U.S. Undocumented individuals are
pile
embedded in the
documents
fabric
sans
of our
papier,
society. They're raising families, they're living, they're learning, they're working
donc il y a
alongside all of us.
vivre, il y a pas prendre en mi-temps.
As we've seen time and again, we've relied on undocumented workers as essential workers throughout this
documents
pandemic,
et travailleurs sans
and we've relied on the
documents.
billions of dollars they pay
Et
in
nous
taxes at
dépendons
the
de
federal,
eux
state, and
pour
local
faire un
level
de
long
travail,
before
puis
this
payer
pandemic.
taxes, même
There's hard
bien
work ahead
avant
to
la
ensure
pandémie.
immigrants are recognized for their
Et nous
importance to our
fonction
nation's
pour
recovery
aussi
and granted the
immigrants
support they
yo
need
ka
for their
reconnaître
well-being.
yo,
That has to happen at the
puis
federal level,
capable
but it also has to happen at the state level. The
reconnaître
challenging reality is that
bien-être
states
yo.
have been left to contend with 3 decades of federal inaction on immigration. That's messy. It also
Il y a
means states have
3
had
décennies
opportunities and
de
continue
loi
to have
immigration qui
opportunities to
très
make critical
dérangée,
decisions that
et puis
actually
c'est des
affect
opportunités
undocumented
pour faire des
individuals and mixed status
décisions
families
critiques
in terms of access to all the key services,
et qui pour
from
capable de
education to
accès à toute
healthcare
qualité de
to
service
livelihood
qui
to
gagne
safety.
et puis capable
States can and some have taken action to protect immigrants and provide access to these services.
capable faire des
We're going to hear a
bagailles
little bit
pour
more today about some of the states that have done
pour
that and how
améliorer
that's happened.
situation immigrants.
States
Nous
can also
allons
do the
parler un
opposite, as we
peu
have also
sur
seen.
ça.
I'm not going to name names, but others should feel free to.
non.
We're going to talk a little bit about some of the states that have not been supporting
Et puis, nous
immigrants and
allons parler
immigrant
de
families.
l'État qui pas
So
supporter
while
les
state
familles migrantes.
solutions are incomplete without federal action, part of our message here is that we can't let states off the hook. There's a lot of work we can be doing, and it's work
au
we're
niveau
here to do.
fédéral pas fait, mais nous pas qu'à quitter
So
l'État
that's the what of this project that we're going to hear more about.
On va le temps des
Often in policy, we talk about the what and we don't talk about the how or the who.
Pile parler de politique,
And
parler
at
de
Next
qui
100,
ça.
that's something we're looking to change. So I just want to talk about that for 1 minute as
Organisation
well.
Next 100 là, c'est on
This project, in addition to all the recommendations put out, is also about how we think about who gets to make policy, who gets to drive a policy agenda, and who gets to shape what our priorities are as we look forward. It's about empowering immigrants to drive and lead immigration policy, not to be just to be the face of change, but to actually identify the work that needs to be done and chart a course ahead. At Next 100, we're a public policy think tank. We think public policy matters deeply. We think the systemic challenges we face, from immigration to climate change to economic inequality, need systemic solutions. They need policy solutions at a scale only government can provide. But we also believe that the power of government and the scale of government has to be matched by the effectiveness of government, the responsiveness of government, and the connection of the government to the communities it's serving. And that'll only happen when we support those communities to drive change. So that's the who and that's the how that we're also really excited to talk about today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful panelists and co-authors and partners on the report, and let them talk about what they did, what they learned, and what we should all be doing in the fight ahead. But I'm actually going to start by just having them introduce themselves so you know who's here and talk a little bit about their work. We are joined, and this work was done by an incredible group of immigrant women leading the charge to embrace all immigrant families around the country. I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves. I'd like you to talk about your organization, just so we know where you're from, what you're coming from. And then I'd also like you to talk about specifically the question I want to kick off with, which is how barriers to access for important services impacted you as an immigrant or the immigrant families you work with. So with that, I'm going to start by kicking it off to Agrippina. Introduce yourself, introduce your role, and talk a little bit about barriers.
Thank you, and hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rosario, for including me in this. So my name is Agrippina Gomez. I'm a DACA recipient, nursing student, and a community organizer. Also a mother of a 9-year-old boy. So what I have faced as an immigrant woman here in the US, with not only having barriers in the education, but also in the health system. It's been very hard to get access to those systems, especially when you're an immigrant. So also not only have I faced those barriers, but also being an organizer, I have seen how it affects the people here in the Valley. And I'm sure it's not only here in the Rio Grande Valley, but it's everywhere. So that's why I joined this amazing group to be able to work together and share how we can collaborate and create change and new policies for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us in your work. Wency.
Merci tout. Bonjour tout le monde. I am a case manager with Haitian Bridge Alliance. And it was my absolute pleasure to be a part of this study and everything else that might come from this. And for me and the people I came across, I would say one of the biggest things that have kept them from moving ahead, the biggest barriers have been lack of identity, basics such as car insurance, car licenses, driver's licenses, and also bank accounts. Those are some of the biggest things that I've seen. All of these keep you from working. All of these keep you from being able to be independent, which is what every single one of these families want, to work for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. It's truly a pleasure to be with all of you, and I hope you're staying safe and healthy. My name is Lorena Romain, and I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Schools. Some of the barriers we looked at in terms of our immigrant students and the families we serve have been many, from food insecurity to no internet access, financial support, and many right now currently in our Texas region who have no running water or electricity due to the weather. Unfortunately, this pandemic has exacerbated the disparities among our community. That, coupled with a lack of support from our government, whether that's local or federal level, has truly impacted our community. However, we have seen how beautiful and resilient our community has been and has continued to thrive in the midst of that. For us at Schools, it has meant that we had to think outside the box and be responsive to the need, connect to families to understand how we can continue to support them. We have experienced things like supporting a family in Dallas, Texas that had been impacted by COVID and who have been separated due to the deportations that continue to happen today under this administration. And that's just the many examples we have of just how families have experienced the inadequate access to services across the board, even in their schools.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. And Rosario, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rosario Quiroz, and I'm a policy entrepreneur at Next 100, where I've been leading the work of embracing our strengths, how to support immigrants in every U.S. state. And I will say that across the years and across the states, it's really disheartening to see continued inequities in some states. I think about North Carolina, and I think about the challenges that undocumented students face there. And those are the exact same barriers that I faced when I graduated from the state 14 years ago. I think about some students that I had come trembling into my classroom with fear because their parents were stopped without a driver's license, and these children did not know what was going to happen to their parents. That is unacceptable. And I think as we've had these conversations, even in states that tend to be more supportive, that have those baseline policies, there are instances where families are confronted with issues of discrimination that is keeping them from accessing health care, discrimination that is keeping them relegated to low wages or even not getting paid, discrimination that is keeping their landlords from giving them a lease so that they can access rental assistance throughout this pandemic and not end up homeless. And when immigrants are faced with those circumstances of discrimination, they often don't know where to turn or if there will be someone who can help them. States can and they must do better.
Thank you. I'd actually love to use that to kick it back to you and ask you to talk a little bit about the report itself. Two pretty substantial components to help you sort of identify some of the opportunities and some of the solutions. Would you talk a little bit more about the project, the two pieces you did, and then some of what you actually heard from families and how we could address them?
Absolutely, and thanks for that question, Emma. So yes, Embracing Our Strengths is a two-part project that is meant as a comprehensive look at what immigrant families, specifically undocumented and mixed status immigrant families, need across several issue areas, including education, healthcare, livelihood, and safety. And we wanted to take a comprehensive look at the needs of immigrants because like we've already heard today, yes, immigrant families need pathways to citizenship where current paths do not exist. And immigrant families are consistently impacted by issues every single day. And there are real things that states can do to ensure that families are supported, to ensure that families are protected. Further, I can't help but think about what if states getting involved creates that tidal wave of change that we need for federal immigration reform. What if states refuse to participate, refuse to engage in this narrative, that they will uproot and criminalize our immigrant communities because they recognize how important those communities are to them. So we need to keep the focus on what states can do. I will say that I think, and I really at the root of me believe that the heart of this project is in our voices, our policy. That part of the project, that report, was based on focus groups with immigrant parents across 4 different states. Next 100 got together with IMSchools and Haitian Bridge Alliance because we wanted to understand families' aspirations, the challenges that stand in the way of aspirations, and we wanted to help chart a path forward towards making sure that every family has what they need to thrive. And I will say that Next 100 reached out specifically to Haitian Bridge Alliance because we know that we had access to the undocumented Spanish-speaking community, but the reality is that our immigrant community is so much broader and so much more diverse than that. We also know that Haitian immigrants, Haitian asylum seekers have been under attack throughout this pandemic. They have been facing deportations, they have been facing expulsions, that includes families, that includes children, and it's really not okay. So we had to look to and we had to prioritize those voices in this work. We also know that Black immigrants in any type of form when people are criminalized, Black people are always disproportionately impacted. So again, Haitian Bridge Alliance was the perfect and the necessary partner in this work. So the report, our voices, our policies, really looks to the strengths of families. There were so many strengths that consistently came up. There were so many ways in which the families showed up for each other, gave each other words of advice, told each other how they navigated challenges. And we charted out some of the recommendations, specifically at the state level, that could help make those challenges easier to bear. And as these focus groups were happening, I was conducting an extensive policy analysis, basically looking at 15 policies, tracking the same 4 areas that we discussed with the families, and seeing what states were actually doing. Because on the one hand, okay, we know what immigrant families need, but we also need to understand and what are states doing to get there. So based on this tracking of those 15 policies, we were able to rate all of the states according to how supportive they are of immigrant families. And I will say that some of the most popular policies that emerged included in-state tuition for undocumented students. It included healthcare, but only specifically for undocumented pregnant women. And it included driver's licenses for people regardless of immigration status. I also want to make note, and I think it's really important that we acknowledge that states grew in their protections and their supports of immigrant families even during this pandemic. That included 8 states that created programs for their immigrant families that were completely left out of any type of federal response, any type of federal relief. And even as I say that, I will say that it was really challenging to also just see how healthcare, specifically for adults, continues to be a heavily neglected area that needs more attention. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I will say that the two parts of this project are really meant as tools for the states. We are sharing with you, this is what immigrant families want and need, and this is what other states have already managed to do. Now it is up to every state, especially the states that got a not supportive on our ratings, to pick up the work and to say, this is how we are going to support our immigrant families moving forward.
Thank you for that. Merci un peu pour ça. State ratings and the not supporting some of the more supportive. But first, let's hear from the rest of you a little bit about your work, since all of you participated and partnered in the project. So Wency, as Rosario said, you led the work of bringing together and conducting focus groups with the Haitian community in both California and Florida. Can you talk a little bit about the process and the substance, what you heard from those conversations with families?
One of the biggest problems, I can say, boundaries that I ran into trying to get parents together was a lack of trust. You know, they didn't know who I was. They didn't know, they never heard of Haitian Bridge Alliance. But unfortunately, one thing most of them had in common, I wasn't the first person to try to help them. Unfortunately, many of the people who came before me hurt them. Either promised help and gave nothing, or according to them, gave their information out to other people. So I was coming into this with a lot of mistrust from me and what I stood for. So I get creative. We were speaking with families who were mixed status or undocumented. So right there was a lot of we don't want people to know. What are you going to do with our information? And there were a lot of cultural barriers as well. Culturally, Haitians are very private, and something like your legal status in a country, that's not something that we talk about. So I say all that to say it was an uphill battle finding parents who were willing to talk to me. But boy, was it worth it. Because after speaking with these families, both in California and in Florida, it was made apparent how much of a need there is. And more importantly, how much of that need can be simply rectified.
Et qui besoin gagner, qui genre, c'est des bails qui tout simplement bien facilement résoudre. The next 100
and other organizations are grassrooting to put forward. And for example, Rosario mentioned bank accounts and driver's licenses. Those are huge. I don't think people realize that if you manage to get a job and they want to pay you, if you don't have a bank account, being able to cash that check is so much harder. But let's take it a step back and let's just think about a driver's license. Imagine how much worse your life would be without a driver's license, and you use your license as ID. It's not just okay to drive, it's an ID. You go for a job, they want to see your license. You want to get a bank account, they want to show proof, they want proof of who you are from this license. So there are a lot of mini barriers, as I said, that we can, that can be fixed or changed or rectified before even going to Congress. Of course, we want the lawmakers to make changes as well. Another thing I just wanted to take the time here to point out is, I know we're talking about undocumented, but I just wanted to step here and talk about the process that many of these people had in common before being released, and that is detention. they all had detention, most of them had detention in common. And I tell you what, again, saying what Rosario said, we need to do better, because I want you to take us a moment and think about prisoners here in America under death row, on death row. They have access to medical aid. They have access to attorneys. If they can't afford one, guess what? We provide that to them, not because we're being nice, but because that is their basic right. I don't want to see many more months of so many of these individuals leaving detention and having no access to attorneys at all. So basically what I'm saying is, if our individuals on death row here in America can have certain rights, why aren't we giving these same basic rights to immigrants that are in detention? And if we cared enough from a humane point of view to give these people the basics in detention, I don't think we would be here with a kangaroo's tail long list of things that need to be changed when they're on the outside. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for listening.
That was really helpful. I mean, and I think both, as folks can hear, both the banking example and the universal representation example, like there's just actually so many concrete steps states can take that make a tremendous difference, even as we wait for pathways to citizenship, and like very concrete around education, healthcare, livelihood, and safety. And those are 2 really good examples that I know came up time and again from both families and looking at what states have done. The other thing I just want to highlight, because it is something we at Next 100 have, I think, learned a lot and seen a lot, is it's all well and good to say you want to develop policy and identify priorities with impacted communities, but there's always that need to figure out how to build trust. And I think this idea that not only have folks been burned by others coming in and saying they're going to fix things, often well-intentioned, right? Fixing things is hard, right? And so not only have people been burned by that, but have been grown cynical about whether the system can be fixed, because the path for policy change can feel long, and building that trust and keeping people motivated, I think, can be really hard when they have a lot of other more concrete things to deal with in their life. So thank you for being a partner with us there.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to say one last thing. I just wanted to use this space to say thank you to all of the families. It is not a small thing to me that you trust. So thank you, families. Thank you so much for putting your trust in us, and we are going to make you proud. Thank you.
That was great, and also a great transition, because as Director Agrippina, you joined this work as a participant, but also with a ton of your own experience in organizing immigrant communities. Can you share with us why you joined this project, and then more broadly, sort of transitioning, what tips would you share for those who want to do policy work and actually engage in a documented community? How can this be done in a responsible and just way?
Yes, thank you. So I joined this amazing group, not only to stay connected, but also to work together. Because not only are we having those problems here in the Rio Grande Valley, in the border where I live, this is also happening in El Paso, California, Florida, New York. Everywhere across the nation, there are thousands of families that are being affected by the lack of access to resources and barriers, and they live this every single day. So I think it's important for me as an organizer to stay connected with other organizations and organizers to be able to continue on doing this work. It's always been a mix of emotions when I help out a family to create a toolkit for family preparedness in case they get deported. They have to create a power of attorney to have someone take care of their child. It's a mix of emotions. Why? Because I went through that. I don't want any other child or any other family to go through the same thing I went through by seeing their parents being taken away by ICE. It is very, it's very bad, it's difficult, it's a roller coaster, and we have to do better. We have to do better as allies, communities, organizers, states. They have to do better. They have to create new policies for all of these families across the nation. Not only, I don't know if I'm just, I develop I'm resilient, or I don't know what it is, but I just don't want any child to go through what I went through. And it just breaks my heart that in this age, we're still doing this and we're still preparing in case their parents get deported. We need to let them be children, live their life, be a child, go to school, have access to all the resources they have. Not only do these families, they have barriers to access in the education or healthcare. Every day when I work with them, they don't know who to trust. So I'm thankful to be able to be part of this in the community and that they trust me. So I'm very glad and thankful to be able to share my story and give them tips and help them out in whatever I can. But as a state, we need to do better. They need to do better and create this policies that will help the families here in the US. Also, I want to say when creating a space or creating new policies for the undocumented community, it is very important to create a safe space for them. Why? Because these families, like the lady before me said, they're trusting you with their information. They're opening up, they're telling their story. This is very essential and crucial to create a safe space for them and include them, make their voice be heard, because their voice matters. These policies are going to affect them every day, every single day. They are affecting these families. So we need to include these families and their voices. Also, not only people in leadership in the school department, they also need to include the voices of the parents and every single one of their students. So I guess just before I just go deeper, just when creating new policies for undocumented families and doing this work, there needs to be a safe space established first, so these families can open up and share their story, and we can help them better like that. If we want to be allies with them, we first need to create a safe environment for these families. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. That is a very thoughtful and comprehensive answer. I appreciate it.
Merci un peu.
Rosario, I'm going to pass it back to you. I know, as you said, the families and their priorities and solutions were a big part of the heart of this project for you, but you also did read 50 states times 15 policies, looking at how to compare across states, how states are doing across these areas. Why did you choose that route, and what were some major, we talk about a lot, but what were some of the major takeaways?
Sure, and I just wanted to say thank you to Wency for taking the words right out of my mouth, and thanking the families. And Agripina, thank you for being here to share a little bit more about your experience and your deep knowledge in the Rio Grande Valley, because without these families, none of this work would have happened. But going back to the policy analysis, Emma, I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways from that analysis is just that every single policy that we've tracked has happened to some extent in some state. So this means that there are, to a limited extent, because there are more things that we can do, right, for immigrant families, but there are routes, there are paths that currently exist to do better for these families. And because there is so much work that needs to happen, no state policymaker, no state in general should think that they have to start from scratch. No state should think that they have to reinvent this wheel, because the truth is that there are decades of work that have gone into thinking about how do we protect our immigrant families. And there are real leaders across the states, right? It should come as no surprise to anyone here that California is leading the way. California has policies that are well beyond the 15 policies that we track here. I think too that there are additional states that have done really great work. I think specifically about Washington State and Oregon, where they have thought about universal implementation for some of their models and really address the barriers to access that come up when you try to implement something universally. I also think about the states that have made really quick progress, like New Jersey, which since 2018 has implemented 9 of their 10 policies. I think about Virginia, which in 2019 had 0 policies. In 2020, they had 5 policies, and they are now well on their way to establishing in-state financial aid for their undocumented students in college. So all of that tells me that there is an opportunity for change and for quick change. I think too, specifically thinking about Virginia, I think about Arizona, and I think about Georgia. I think about the power that exists there when organizers look beyond just the federal elections and also focus attention on state and local elections. We can make real progress for immigrant families. And Emma, I'm starting with like all of the positive stuff, right? Because ultimately, when I say there's a lot of work to be done, there's a lot of work to be done. 28 of the 50 states that we rated got a not supportive on our rating. We had 4 ratings: supportive, moderately supportive, slightly supportive, and not supportive at all. 2 of those states, and only 2 of those states, had 0 policies implemented, and that was Louisiana and Georgia. And again, like I said, Georgia has shown us that maybe they're not there for the hate. Maybe they're not there for the exclusion of immigrants. We need to be thinking about how to make sure that it is clear to people that the rights and the protections of immigrants don't just exist at the federal level. And what I was saying about healthcare very clearly being the most neglected area. So Washington, D.C., and of course there's all of the arguments about statehood with Washington, D.C., but Washington, D.C. as a place is the only place in the United States that has access to some type of health insurance available to anyone, regardless of immigration status and regardless of age, who earns under a certain threshold. Colorado in 2022 will implement more affordable premiums for anyone, regardless of immigration status. And I can't wait to see that implemented. But currently, Illinois is the only state where individuals who are older than 65 years old, that population that is most threatened and most at risk because of COVID-19, they are the only state that provides coverage for those individuals. And, you know, like perhaps it goes without saying, but I don't think it's a coincidence that immigrant communities have been devastated by COVID-19. And I think that that closely correlates with who has and who doesn't have access to health insurance.
before we keep moving, I think we had another panelist join. Darlene, you want to introduce yourself, your organization, the role in the work?
Good afternoon. My sincere apologies for being late. We always putting out fires, always dealing with emergencies. My name is Gerlene Joseph. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Alliance and the Black Immigrants Bail Fund. We provide walk-around services, direct services, humanitarian assistance, detention support, organizing, and heavily working with advocacy and policy to change the immigration system as we know it. We work with undocumented folks, asylum seekers at the US-Mexico border, fighting for TPS, DACA, and really uplifting the voices of Black migrants, Afro-Latinx, and folks of African descent.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. No need for apologies. As those who know, you are fighting a lot of good fights right now, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Start to transition a little bit from what you all learned to the work of ahead, the work of making change. I want to start with Lorena and Gerlene. Both of you have founded and are now leading organizations that provide immigrant families. You touched on a little bit with supports where previously supports were lacking. You're working directly with them. You're making change in different ways around policy, direct services, advocacy. Tell us a little bit about your organizations. What have you learned? What makes it hard? What should we take from your lessons as we think about turning into some more state advocacy work? And Lorena, you want to kick us off?
Thank you, Emma, for that question. So first, I'd like to start to tell you a little bit about IMSCHOOLS. IMSCHOOLS is an immigrant-led nonprofit organization that partners with K-12 educators to transform schools into safe and welcoming spaces for undocumented students and families. And we do that essentially in three ways: professional development for educators, empowerment workshop for students and parents, and lastly, thinking about what policies have to be dismantled or created at the school level or the district level in order to truly support our students so they can have a learning environment where they can fully thrive. And to answer some of your questions of what we have learned as an organization has been with this work, nobody's doing this work of working in the intersection of immigration and education. And what that has meant for us, for example, I lead our work in our Dallas region. And for me, it has meant that a lot of schools have turned us away and saying, we don't need your services, or it's too political immigration and education to bring into our school space, and therefore we can't bring our services. And that learning has also meant that it has reinforced that our work is essential now more than ever, because there isn't this service being provided to the educator, to the students, to the families, or to the school district in a holistic way, which is our approach at IMSCHOOLS. And I'd like to tell you what that means when we work on the ground with schools and with our students. So we have a student in San Antonio, for example, that was told in her high school counselor that she couldn't go to college, and she attended one of our workshops at IMSCHOOLS, and she learned about institute tuition in Texas and about the Dream .US scholarship. And now Miriam is in her second year of school and aspiring to be an educator herself. What it has meant for our educators across our 4 regions in San Antonio, Camden, New Jersey, Dallas, Texas, and New York City has meant that the schools and educators have provided this professional development that has equipped them with some tools on how to transform their classroom into safe and welcoming spaces through curriculum thinking, through posters that they can put inclusive practices all across, not only for their undocumented students, but for all their students and parents in general. What has meant in terms of policy change, we've seen Camden School District enact a policy that they didn't have before in support of their students, undocumented students and families that they serve, and an implementation that uses IMSCHOOL services to make sure we're taking that holistic approach. So there has been a lot of learning of, it's been hard to enter some schools. It's been easier in other friendlier spots for us, but it has also meant that we have seen how much and those small moments or impacts that we have created across at a national scale. And there's so much work to be done that we're just excited to be part of that positive impact.
Thank you. I know some of that work has informed some of the state level policy recommendations you all have put forth. Geraldine, talk a little bit from your side.
Yes, thank you so much, Lorena. Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge my amazing colleague, Quincy Ecclesiastes, who actually led the project and the research and the focus group. So I'm grateful for you for all the work that you have put through this. As you know, Lorena mentioned, learning has been extremely difficult, especially when it comes to language access. You know, for the Haitian communities or non-Spanish English speaking communities, we have an extra layer of difficulties, when it comes to how the system works, the type of services and support that is available for the students and their parents. Now, imagine the majority of our community members have come to the United States and they do not speak Spanish, they do not speak English, and they have to find a way to maneuver the system. We are seeing a lot of issues with children unable to do their homework because their parents cannot really help them. We are seeing a lot of right now because of online learning, parents who do not have the technology, know-how and support to be able to really get involved in their children's learning. We have experienced, as a matter of fact, I can share a story with you where we have families who will simply, college is out of the question because they do not understand, as Lorena mentioned, that there are programs they might qualify for. One very simple story is of a very bright young athletic man young men who had a scholarship at a very well-known university, and they were excited. He was going to be able to go to the university of his dreams. He was going to be able to learn and be able to become all that he dreamed of, only to find out, even with the scholarship, right, he couldn't accept it because of his legal status. He was on TPS, and that was one of the questions that he was supposed to, that was one of the criteria. He was supposed to be a resident or permanent citizen of the country. Unfortunately, he was just on TPS. So because of that rejection, he and his family believed that he could never go to college. Not understanding, yes, he couldn't go to this Ivy League university that he worked so hard to be able to get the scholarship for. But he didn't understand that he could still, go to a community college and work his way through. So those barriers and misunderstanding and lack of opportunities has been a common thread that we see throughout. Higher education seems to be unachievable, especially for undocumented children, undocumented immigrants. So access to language, access to support, really understanding what's available, how can we really support those families, and also how do we educate the educators? How do we get into the school systems in New York, in California, in Texas, in Florida, around the country, to be able to explain to those advisors, to those, it's been a while since I've been in school, to the advisors to really guide the students through the right path and provide the support for them. So we are seeing a lot of issues, but we are learning. And one thing that we do is that we don't give up. So we'll continue to push to make sure that the systematic changes that are needed on local and federal levels happen for those people, specifically undocumented migrants, immigrants.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. Okay, turning even more specifically to the turning even more specifically to the path ahead. So y'all did a bunch of work with families, looking at state policy. Nobody can make policy change alone. We think about that a lot. We, in our audience, we have policymakers, we have organizers, we have researchers, we have educators, we have families, we have immigrants, we have non-immigrants. I'm sure we have other people too. What's a step that everyone, let's give them some homework, right? We've said there's a lot of states that need to take a lot to that are capable legally of doing so, even as we wait for federal immigration reform. Let's give some folks some homework to do. What's a step that each group of people can take after this event ends to create a more supportive environment for undocumented and mixed status immigrant families? As you all were warned, I'm going to ask each of you to focus on one particular stakeholder group as you think about your response. Agrippina, I'm going to start with you.
So it's very important to for families to lend a helping hand. You don't know that maybe your children's classmate, is undocumented. Teach them in your home how to be open, how to teach your children at home how not to, be a bully or it starts at home. With our families. So everything will start at home. Create a safe environment. You don't know if your waitress at IHOP is undocumented. You don't know if your neighbor is undocumented. So what I have learned, as an organizer, is that we need to become allies with everyone. We need to help each other out. When I was creating the toolkits for families, some of these families, they don't have immediate family members that can take care of their children in case they're deported. So they go with a trusted neighbor, with a trusted employer, or a friend, or someone they met and they just became friends. And, they held that space for that undocumented person, and they felt comfortable by sharing their story, their status. So, but that was the only reason that was the only reason that was doable or available was because that person held space for them, and it started at home. So it all starts at home. What I'm trying to say is have a heart, and to, our undocumented families, know that you're not alone. There are a lot of people working really hard. It's me as an immigrant, it's really hard it was really hard to come out of the shadows. I'm still scared sometimes, not gonna lie, but the reason why I'm still continuing to do this is because, like I said, I don't want any other family, any other child to go through what I went, to be separated from your family. I don't want any other little kids see their grandma being taken away. So that's the reason I'm still continuing to do this work. And just know that you're not alone. You're not a number. You're not a number on those graphs that say thousands of families were separated at the border. You're not just a number to us or to organizations. You matter. Your opinion matters. You matter. Your voice matters. And let's humanize those graphs, let's humanize them, because there's a story behind that. There's a family that was separated. There's a child that didn't go to college because someone didn't believe in them and didn't teach them the right way to access those opportunities. There's a person that their cancer spread because they didn't have access to healthcare. And I see this every single time in my community. So just know that you're not alone, and we're here still fighting the good fight.
Thank you for that. That's gonna be hard to beat for the rest of our panelists. And thank you for doing this and lending your voice and your time, even though it is still scary. We appreciate and recognize that. Wency, I'm going to go to you next and ask you to answer the same question around organizers. What can organizers be doing? You're still on mute.
Sorry about that. I think one of the biggest things organizers can do, I'm coming from a place of language. I speak multiple languages, coding languages, and play music, which is all languages, communication. And so I always approach situations such as immigration from a communication point of view. How can they communicate? And I actually want to take the time and share a little story. I met one of the families that I ended up interviewing. That family had a newborn child. 5 days old when I met them. 5 days old when I met them. And later that day, I saw something on TV where these young American parents were talking about how thankful they are for first responders. And their issue was that they were out at the park with their newborn child. And their newborn child started having a seizure. And there were people around. We called for help. Responders, people knew CPR. And I immediately thought about the woman I met an hour ago. If she went to the park with her child and her little baby started having a seizure, what could she do? She's been in America most of the time in detention, but she had been in America for almost a year now. I don't think she even knows how to say, help me, please. So my point of view is I want to see organizers being more logical about teaching and giving immigrants tools to fend for themselves. I had some ideas. Number one, I'm still paying college, I'm still paying off college bills. So what that says to me is that universities want to be taken seriously and they want to be paid for that. Okay, it's time for you to step up for the community. I don't see why an immigrant family who just moved here, who doesn't know English, why aren't you going to the local university to get your free English classes? That should be at every university. Here's another idea. Schools. Every school has immigrant families and moms, sometimes dads, dropping the kids off in the morning, dropping them off in the evening. Why don't every school, every single elementary, middle school, high school, why aren't they employing their gym or their auditorium for the first period and the last period of every single day? When mom drops off the kid goes to her first period, mom goes to 1 hour English class, or vice versa. Pick you up 1 hour early, or pick you up while you're doing 3 hours of football. Mom and dad got 3 hours of English. Free. And I explained that to someone, and their first thought was, oh, but who shall pay for this? Well, last time I heard, I came across a lot of English students who just can't find somewhere to intern. Why aren't these future teachers and educators and English majors or any college student at all who needs some sort of volunteering credits or intern credits. There's your workforce right there. So I say all of that to say, yes, I want them learning English before they need it. And let's take Norway, for example. Norway is one of those countries I look to them a lot for changes America can do, because America's lagging. One wonderful thing that I love that Norway is doing, while you're in detention, you're already getting Norwegian classes. So whether you're there 1 week or 2 years, when you get out, you can say, someone, help my child, please. That's all I ask. So that's my little spiel about what organizers can do. Like, look at the resources that you have. You have students learning but nowhere to work. You have teachers who want to teach, but kids don't want to learn. There are whole families would die to have a teacher like you, if you're listening, a teacher like you, to give them free classes. Online, in person. Organizers, I'm talking to you. There's much you can do, and it doesn't take money. You just want to care. You just need to want to care and want to push others to care as much as you.
Nice, thank you. Helpful, concrete, direct, good action steps. Laura, let's talk about educators. What can educators do?
Yes, that was hard to follow for sure, Wendy. I would say if you're an educator, reflect on your classroom practices and ask yourself, who are you leaving out? Intentionally or not, we often leave out our undocumented students and the parents that we serve. So a lot of the schools might be hybrid. So think about what are ways that I can do it virtually and in person. So virtual posters that are safe and welcome or inclusive to immigrants, or whether that's a physical poster that you can put in your classroom to start to create that dialogue and that positive image of you are an immigrant. It's an asset to be an immigrant. The other thing you can do is think about the languages and the resources you share with the language for the students and the parents, and if the parents can access that language. I think language has been spoken about through all our panelists, and want to reiterate that teachers have that responsibility to ensure that the parents are getting the resource in the language of their home language. And lastly, think about how you can continue to be an ally inside the classroom and outside the classroom, regardless of the status of the children or the parents that you serve. And we have some great resources in our website if you don't know where to get started.
And for those who haven't been to the schools website, they have some exceptional resources that do a little shout out to them. Rosario, let's talk a little bit about researchers. What can researchers be doing?
Sure. So, yeah, I think there's been an increasing interest to just include the voices of people directly impacted and to think about how we're going to those voices and being led by their urgency for change. Because like Agripina mentioned earlier, who better to know how badly the change is needed than the families that are impacted by the changes every single day. But as researchers, I think that there is a need, one, to get it out of our head that any population is a hard to reach population. Yes, some populations are it's going to require more work from you, but so what? Figure it out. And I think that too, like as we're bringing in those impacted voices, we need to be thinking about how we're respecting those voices. And when we're talking about undocumented communities, that means pay people for their work. We know the inequities that they face, so figure out the funding so that you can pay them to include them in your discussions, to include them in your research. Also, come prepared and come correct with the resources around potential triggers, because some of this work is trauma. Some of this work is really painful to discuss again. So families need to have resources that they can turn to after your conversations. And finally, I would say that be honest, you know, like be honest when you don't have the answers. That doesn't mean that you don't keep fighting for those answers. You don't keep fighting alongside people to make sure that you're getting to a response that works for everyone. And when you are stuck, when you don't know what to do, look to the people who have managed to do the work and learn from them.
So, quoi qu'on qui ça pour faire, et garder moun qui fait travail là déjà pour apprendre de eux.
Thank you.
Merci.
And Garlene, last up, what should policymakers do?
Et dernière question,
Garlene. Correct.
Qui ça décideur politique yo doit faire?
As my sister Rosario just mentioned,
besoin de faire ça faire correct. Jean Sem Rosario fait dit là. Et vraiment tendez toutes les collègues moi c'est des guerrières de justice qui partager connaissance.
Yeah, come correct, understanding that policies, as Rosario mentioned, need to reflect the needs of the people.
Politique la faut capable refléter besoin
asking policymakers, we are asking the elected officials, we are asking the people in power to listen to the community, to be a part of the communities, to partner with communities, not only community leaders, but also actually people who are impacted by those legislations, by those rules, by those bills. Because the biggest misfortune is to have bills and policies that do not align with the needs of the people we are supposed to be serving. That is why we have the Haitian Bridge Alliance bring together the direct services with the community, organize the community for change, and work in advocacy to be able to create policies that will reflect the needs of the people. If there is a disconnect between our policymakers and our community members, this is not going to work. And we need bold actions. No excuses. We know that there is a lot of possibilities. We can no longer allow the most impacted, the most vulnerable to be left behind. We are calling on all the policymakers, we are calling on Congress, we are calling on the not the minister. In Haiti, we have ministers, but it's the Secretary of Education and Housing. How do we make sure that a student, undocumented immigrant student child, make sure that they get safe housing? In order for them to be able to learn properly, they have to be able to have safe housing. And they have to be able to have healthy food. They have to be able to have healthy community. Making sure that we connect those dots and making sure that whatever policy, whatever bill, whatever we are doing, coalesce with those issues. And understanding that we are here to support in that process. Everything is a partnership between the community, the advocate, and the lawmakers. How do we continue that process, making sure that no child is left behind from pre-K to higher education? Whether a student is in Brooklyn, New York, or in San Antonio, Texas, or San Diego, California, or Miami, Florida. How do we make sure that we have a system that answers to the needs of those people, making sure we understand the cultural background of those people, the fear, the stigma that is associated with being undocumented, and then go even deeper when it comes to Black migrants, Black immigrants, the double layer of the school to prison pipeline. How do we break those cycles? How do we make sure that we care for each and every one of those children? Because this is our future. This is our future president, this is our future vice president, and these are the people who will literally carry the torch that we are carrying now. So we want to make sure that we provide access, we provide wholesome a system with safe housing, safe nutrition, so that their children can really learn and make sure we provide access to higher education to those who are in need as well.
Continuer dans l'éducation juste dans l'université parce que besoin.
I have to say, it would be hard to match, which she was, but that was a truly excellent set of homework assignments, and I hope somebody wrote them all down. Really good, concrete stuff.
Tout le monde
I think we have probably time for like 1 or 2 audience questions. We have about 4 minutes left, so maybe that's 1 audience question. I'm going to start with one that a couple of you have answered this a little bit, but I know all of you have thought about it a ton in your day-to-day work, and would love to hear more. Talks a little bit about building trust. As Rosario said, it is becoming of more interest to more people to try and engage impacted individuals across areas in the work. But I think people think it's going to be easy, and it's not. It's not easy to do in a meaningful way, and all of you have done that work and have done it thoughtfully and in expert ways. What do you suggest on approaches for building trust and relationships with communities, especially communities who face additional barriers? For those who need translation, for those who've dealt with government services who ask them and their families to do all the work themselves? How do you, coming into this work, think about building trust in those cases?
I can do really quickly and share that within the Haitian community specifically, trust is very minimal, right? Understanding the history within the system, what people have to go through. So building trust is key to survival for all of us. And because of past experiences, we understand the hurt that needs to be a lot of healing that needs to be done. Understanding the reality of people, where they are coming from. Building trust is important. And for sake of time, I'll just stop here so that my other colleagues can pitch in as well.
For me, I can say what helped to build the trust was to make myself helpful. It is hard for someone to trust me if everything coming out of my mouth is in the future. You know, so if I come across a family and I know I can help them, but they don't want to talk to me because they don't know who I am. I just help, you know, it could be they need diapers. It could be they didn't realize there was an organization in the area that gives free food if you have children. There's so many ways to be helpful to these people, and you have to understand most people who want to use you, not all, but most, who want to use you and abuse you, they're not giving their all to help you first. So that would be my advice to anyone who's trying to get trust. And I actually want to tie this in with a question that I received, you know, building trust, especially for communities who need translation, but they deal with governments such as schools and require children and families to bear the brunt of the heavy load. That is a good question. That is a very good question. And for that second part, you know, how do you help these parents who are expected to be uplifting? My advice, another way of proving helpful is to provide those translation and interpretation services. There were many families to get them to trust me. I was their on-call interpreter. They would call me at all times of day to interpret anything. They'd be walking down the street and someone smiled. They'd call me and say, hey, what is this person saying to me? And you know, after a while they realize, okay, she really cares about me as a person. That's really important. People want to help from a misguided sense of themselves. They need to help because they feel bad about whatever they are dealing with. And we working in the space have to remember it's not about us, not even a little bit. It's not about us. It's about them. It's about the people that we're helping. It's about being efficient to them and being solutions focused to them and their needs. That's all I have.
That's great. Thank you. Lorena, you want to jump in with last words?
Yes, thank you so much. And absolutely agree with both my colleagues here. And I just take that approach of if this space of helping is not genuine, you have no business helping anybody. And with that sentiment, really has to be authentic of what does it look like to not create for them, but co-create with them. Ask them, how can you build trust? Begin by asking them how they want to be invited. What's the most useful way that you can serve them if that service is genuine? Because they'll see from a mile away that your service is not genuine, that the support you're trying to provide is not genuine, it has intentions behind it. And I said, once you have created that, empower them to be their advocates, their own advocates. Empower them that if they need translation in school, that they demand translation from the school, and that they have every single right to continue to thrive in this country.
Thank you. And now we see why we're glad that you guys are leading the fight on some of these issues to actually address this and address it, not just for individuals, but also systemically at the policy level. So thank you. Okay, with that, we're late. Of course, we are. Want to thank each of you for being with us today. Want to thank the whole audience for coming, listening, learning a little bit both about the work, the opportunities, getting some homework assignments, learning about how we can think about doing policy differently with communities. I want to give a special thanks to a couple of folks who have not yet been named. One are the behind the scenes teams at the Century Foundation and Next 100 who helped make this event happen and pull it all together. Want to thank our friends at Respond Crisis Translation, Romina and Nadej, who have been translating throughout this event. Thank you so much for doing so. Hope you pass that along to your listeners as well. Most of all, want to thank the families and the parents who worked with you all, who helped remind us all when we do this work, but also help us think through what the real priorities are, what the real opportunities are, and what we need to be telling policymakers to address. They gave us a good list, and now it's on us to take it to the states to ask them to do their part to support immigrants and immigrant families. So thank you to all of you. Recording of this will be on the next100.org, and we appreciate you.
Toute information ça dans 100.org et vraiment apprécié nous. Merci un peu.